Well, good morning. It's Crazy Cheap Chick, and today we are going to make a pumpkin pie. Now we're going to cheat a little. We're going to use a store-bought pie crust because pie crusts are a whole nother video in themselves. They're easy to make, but I don't feel like doing it today, so I'm not going to. I do have to work up the pumpkin though. We're not using a can of pumpkin. Now, when I was down in Florida, this is the kind of thing that I like to do. My sister-in-law and brother-in-law took us to kind of an outdoor farmer's market, flea market kind of thing. And I like to look for varieties of plants that I can't get in my area. And this was called a Mexican pumpkin. I've never seen this variety before. And I bought it really for the seeds, but I'm gonna make pumpkin pies out of it today. And then I'll save the seeds. Now I bought another melon down there, and it was called dinosaur egg, and I had never seen that variety before. And so we ate it while we were down there, and I saved all of these seeds. That's a ton of seeds, ton. So I'm gonna try to grow that in my garden. And let's get busy. We're gonna work up this pumpkin. It's easy, it just takes a little bit of time. There's basically two different ways you can work up squash. You can either boil it or you can do it in the oven. Since this is really small, I'm just gonna do it on top of the stove. And my sister-in-law gave me this super sharp knife, which I've already cut myself with once. It is really sharp. And I'm gonna cut this up into chunks and we're gonna boil it. Wow, that smells really good, really pumpkin-y. Now look at all these seeds. So what I'm going to do is I've gotten out a strainer and I'm going to put all the seeds in here and rinse them off. That's going to be step one. Wow, that's almost more seeds and pulp than pumpkin. But we're going to start separating these out because you don't want this stuff. You just want the seeds. Okay, so we've got the pumpkin hollowed out. I've got the seeds, I've rinsed them, and we're gonna lay these out on probably a paper plate to dry. And I've got all this pulp, and there's some seeds in there. I didn't get them all out. I'm gonna throw this in the compost heap, and we might get a couple of volunteer plants. Okay, so I've kind of sliced this up. Now, squash, usually a lot of them have a really hard shell, as does this one, and it makes it hard to peel them. So I'm gonna put these in the microwave for maybe a minute, just to try to soften them up to make it easier to peel. Yep, we're gonna give those a whirl for about a minute and a half. And I've got these seeds all laid out on a paper tray. Hi, Sparky. And I'm gonna lay them in the sun to dry. And does that sun feel good? I had to microwave those 3 or 4 minutes to make them soft enough to peel. But now we've got the chunks in water and we are just gonna boil them until they're mushy. This is why people buy cans of pumpkin, though it doesn't taste as good. Okay, we've got the hard part done because we've got the pumpkin all worked up. Now we're gonna make the pie. This was my grandma's pumpkin pie recipe. And when a recipe looks like this, you know it's good. You can actually use a blender. I'm gonna use a food processor, but a blender works just as well. And you start with 1 cup sugar. There's our worked up pumpkin, and we're gonna add 2 cups of pumpkin, or you could add a can. Cup 2. Oh, come on. 2 cups pumpkin. And that is probably equal to about a can. But canned pumpkin doesn't taste as good. In fact, when I was growing up, we didn't even use pumpkin. We used crookneck squash, which is much sweeter and milder than pumpkin. In fact, the first time I had a real pumpkin pie, I didn't like it. Next, we're gonna add 3/4 cup milk. These are the next ingredients. We're gonna add 1/2 teaspoon cinnamon. That's what this is. We're gonna add 1/4 teaspoon of allspice and 1/8 of a teaspoon of cloves. I don't use that pumpkin pie spice. I use the real deal. And then 1 tablespoon of flour. I know that doesn't sound like very much, but you need it. So now let's dump that in. Next is gonna be vanilla. So there's 1/2 teaspoon of vanilla. I make my own vanilla. and I put it in this repurposed salad dressing jar. It's really good. And I made a video on how to make vanilla if you're interested. Final thing is 2 eggs. You're just gonna crack 2 eggs in there. Okay, let's give it a whirl. Might have to scrape the sides to make sure it gets completely mixed. Okay, I cheated and used store-bought pumpkin pie crust. And now we're just gonna pour it in here. Now this should be enough for 1 pie. I'm gonna have to do this again for the second pie. It's almost always exactly right. Okay, that's pretty good. Well, that pumpkin made 2 pies and 2 little miniature pies because I had just a little bit left over, and I found some pie crust in my freezer. I don't know how old that is. And now we're just going to put it in the oven. But before I do that, I'm going to cover the edges up with aluminum foil to try to keep those from getting too browned. All right, we've got them in the oven, 425. Okay, I just took these out of the oven, and we're going to take off the aluminum foil. And those look pretty good. There is the finished product. They look great. This one, when I took the aluminum foil off, I kind of pulled a little bit of the crust off. One of the things that you want to do as a good cook is you always want to taste test the product, because you don't want to give your guests something that may not be good. You want to make sure that it's edible. So this pumpkin pie, I'm going to try it. So good. You know, I learned from others. I learned from my grandma and my mom, both of who are very good cooks. My mom always thinks she's not a good cook, but my mom is as good a cook as her mom was. She just makes different things. But this pumpkin pie was my grandma's, and it is so, so delicious. I can't quit eating it because it's so good. And that Mexican pumpkin, pretty mild and tasty. I like it. And I'm definitely going to try to grow some of those in my garden. Well, as always, if you got anything out of my videos, give me a like, leave me a comment, share my videos, subscribe. I would love that. So I hope that there's some pumpkin pie in your future, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. This is Crazy Cheap Chick coming to you from Brightbridge Farm.